Hello, I'm Paul Johnston and welcome to this week's Bike File, the show that puts the tastiest bikes of the year to the test.
And I'm Wazza. On today's show, we are going to be looking at the well-dressed burly doorman of the motorcycling world. I am, of course, talking about muscle bikes.
We'll be judging each of this week's bikes in terms of style, practicality, value for money and performance, and the one with the most points at the end will be the winner.
Now, choosing the winner should be a simple enough process, but regular viewers will know that it normally ends up in fisticuffs and an argument between Paul and myself. But before we get on with the test proper, let's have a rundown of the competitors on show today.
1, 2, 3, 4.
First up this week is the beefy Suzuki GSX1400.
Then, all the way from America, it's Buell's XB12S Lightning.
Next in line is Honda's semi-retro offering, the CB1300.
We've also got Yamaha's chunky XJR1300.
And finally, the very 1970s looking Kawasaki ZRX1200.
Now it's time for the first of our tests today, which is going to be this here GSX1400. And I believe you're looking after this one, Paul.
I am indeed, or it may well be looking after me, because it's a right big bruiser, isn't it?
So I can't hear you, you're too far away. This bike's too big.
It is enormous, isn't it? But they all are this week. Blue and white Suzuki, it's got to be, hasn't it?
Only colours,
It's
only
the
colours.
only colours for a Suzuki, and I mean, that seat, armchair material, if you ask me that.
It's going to be a very sumptuous ride for you.
I think it is. The Suzuki GSX1400 screams good looks, ability and attitude. It's been around a little while, it's not exactly brand new for this year, but for many people it's still the muscle bike to own. It used to be the case not that many years ago that any retro looking bike would be full of old technology, but nothing could be further from the truth now with these more modern machines. This GSX1400, for example, is packed with the very latest sophistication. Just a look at the clocks, for example, will tell you that this machine is now high-tech. We didn't have displays like that on the muscle bikes of the 1970s. The motor is, of course, now fuel-injected, and it features a very clever dual-valve ignition system, which they say improves throttle response and gives you more MPG. So Suzuki have done a great job of making a very new engine look very retro. Despite its enormity, the GSX is really well-mannered and well-balanced on the road. It weighs 228 kilos, but even so, it won't object to being hustled along twisty lanes. Now, I know it's not a major selling point on a bike like this, but it's certainly worth mentioning this huge cavernous hole under the seat. Look at that, it's massive. You don't find that often on bikes these days. Still got the tools at the back, but there's loads of room there for a lock, set of waterproofs and maybe a couple of sandwiches for lunch as well, but probably still not big enough for my wife's handbag. Speaking of pillions, this is possibly the best bike in the world on which to take someone for a spin that's never been on a bike before. I could live with and ride this bike every single day of the year and never ever get bored. Okay, it's not got the performance of a modern sports bike, we know that, but it has got loads and loads of street cred and it's very, very comfortable to ride. The trouble with retro-looking bikes is that some of them are so obviously modern bikes with chrome bits stuck on here and there just for effect. That's not so with the GSX. So it's over to the scoreboard for the GSX1400. For styling, 8 out of 10. Looks the business, but would look better if it still had the old white wheels. Performance, 7 out of 10. A great smooth engine, but lacking just a little in the mid-range. Practicality, 7 out of 10. Very comfortable, could do with a small fairing to remove the worst of the wind. And value, it's the cheapest bike here, so 8 out of 10.
You enjoy that one then, Paul?
I enjoyed it immensely. I love this bike, it's great, it's big, it's comfortable, there's loads of power. To be honest, I expected perhaps a touch more power from such a big thing.
Yeah.
Perhaps a little bit...
It's slightly flat in the middle for something
just
so
a little
big,
bit lacking in the middle, but I mean, it's not a real complaint. I did knock it down a touch on style because I think it looks better with white wheels.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. They may be a pain to clean.
Oh, they are, yeah.
But they do lift it just that little bit more, don't they?
Yeah, with the blue and white colour scheme, it just carries it through. But a very healthy score.
A very healthy score indeed.
And one which will be difficult to beat, I think. So what are you going for next?
Well, I'm going for something very different.
Right.
As you can see, I've gone from the sublime to the ridiculous. Where the Suzuki was 18 feet long, This thing looks like it's been in a crusher already.
It's tiny, isn't it? Yeah, Buell XB12 Lightning from Buell, but it looks like you could just pick it up and put it under your arm and walk away with it, doesn't it?
You give yourself a hernia, mind. There's a lot of weight in there. It's deceptive.
But it is a tiny little bike and will feel very different to the rest of the bikes this week.
But Buell have always done things differently. They've done it their own way. So let's see how it compares in this muscly mix.
It'd be good to see if you can actually fit on.
It's going to be a squash. As with the smaller engine XB9s, the XB12s come in two versions, the sportier looking Firebolt and the rather harder looking Lightning that we've got here. They're funny things, Buells, and that's funny in both senses of the word. Their looks alone make them funny ha-ha to plenty of folk, while the very fact that they're based around a Harley-Davidson motor makes them funny strange to just about everybody else. So before we go any further, let's get a couple of things straight. First, no matter what anyone in a Buell hat may tell you, that engine is nothing like a modern sports motor. But with that little lot out of the way, it is with pleasure I can tell you that the motorcycle in here is actually rather good. The short, sharp chassis means this bike turns very quickly and is actually surprisingly good on the track. On bumpy roads, however, be warned, it can become a bit of a slappy handful. Elsewhere, the bike's aggressive nature is backed up by that pugilistic styling, and those high flat bars at the front sit you right forwards, poised and ready for attack. The motor and gearbox guarantee this bike will never be a genuine sporting proposition, so the less pretentious XB12S here makes much more sense. There's not a whole heap of power available. In fact, there's only just over 100 horsepower in here. But even so, you'll be surprised at how quickly the big numbers come up on the dial. And once you've tuned into the Buell's way of thinking, I challenge you not to enjoy this motor. Styling, 7 out of 10. Some are going to want to give it much more, others much less. We'll sit in the middle. Performance, 6 out of 10. Can be brilliant when everything's right. Can be a bit finicky when it's not. Practicality, 6 out of 10. It may have a belt drive for minimal maintenance, but apart from that, it's not got the comfort or anything else to make it an easy bike to live with. Value, 5 out of 10. At just over 7.5 grand, the Buell's the most expensive bike here.
Well, it doesn't look like a very comfortable machine, this, was it? Is it?
Not especially, no. And I think when they designed it, they didn't have gangling frames like mine in mind.
No, you're just the wrong shape, mate, that's what it is.
All wrong.
But that's a bad score, disappointing score, and I think you're disappointed with the bike in general, aren't you?
I am a little, it's a shame. I mean, there are times when it all came together, it's brilliant. And I think you'd have to accept if you bought one of these, one ride in 10 is going to be outstanding.
Oh.
Question is, can you live with the other 9?
I know what you're saying. Well,
You know.
not a good score for the old Buell, but never mind. See if you can peel yourself off that rather odd-shaped seat, because Suzuki GSX1400 is still in the lead with a good score of 30 points, but I think I might just have the machine to give it a run for its money, and it's over there. And here it is, was it? Honda's CB1300. Do you know very much about these?
Well, Honda have been trying to get in on the muscle bike market for a long time, haven't they? We go back a few years, the CB1.
Yeah, CBX, the big, massive six-cylinder.
That worked, didn't it?
Yeah, well, that was great, yeah.
They're trying to build on that heritage. CB1 came first, then they got the Blackbird motor, went off on a tangent, gave us the X11.
That's right,
Neither really found favour.
Well, they reckon this it might just do the trick for them. It looks right, doesn't it? Sort of semi-retro, nice red and white colour scheme. It's a Honda, so it's going to be okay, we think.
Just hope it's got a bit of aggression,
Well,
eh?
30 points to beat, eh? Let's give it a go. The CB1300 is Honda's newest old bike, if you kind of see what I mean, with a heavy growling engine and 107 brake horsepower encased in a heavy 80s style bike. Honda seem to have developed an uncanny knack over the years for producing bikes that do their job with so little fuss that we almost take them for granted now. Well, guess what? They've gone and done it again with the new CB1300. Lots of four-cylinder machines need to hit somewhere around 6,000 RPM before anything exciting starts to happen. This CB1300 develops its peak power at a lowly 5,800 RPM and it will pull cleanly in just about any gear from as little as 1500 RPM. Make no mistake, this bike is big and it's heavy, but it's not intimidating in any way. In fact, it's easy to ride and it handles really well. And since riding it, I've been avoiding motorways and fast A roads in favour of more challenging B roads. And it's not very often you'd say that about something which weighs 240 kilos and has 1300 cc's. The gearbox is typical Honda, super slick with no hints of any false neutrals. The steering is more than sharp enough to have some real fun on the twisties, although the suspension could be a touch on the soft side for any serious boy racer types. Looks-wise, this is not quite as retro as some of the other bikes in this class, but it has a kind of pleasant mix of new and old styling. As I said before, this is no sports bike, but I'm sure that in the right hands this could certainly teach the boy racers a thing or two. And it's not slow either, with a top speed close to 140 miles an hour. So it's over to the scoreboard on Honda's CB1300. Styling 7 out of 10. That engine just doesn't look retro enough. Performance 8 out of 10, a fantastic motor that pulls cleanly from very low revs. Practicality 8 out of 10, very comfortable, and you could ride this every day of the week. Value 7 out of 10, it's not quite the cheapest in this class.
So, how does it compare to the GSX?
Well, I would say it's probably a better bike to throw around. You could probably have a bit more fun on this.
Surprising given how big it looks, isn't it?
Yeah, but as I said before, it's not intimidating. It handles really well, very smooth, loads of power down at the bottom end, which is great. Very low revving, like most of them are, but there's just a problem with the style of it with me.
Now, you're saying it's not looking old enough, don't you?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
And why is that?
Well, what I'm saying is these bikes are retro. Make no mistake, they're made to look like 70s muscle bikes, but that engine...
Oh, I hadn't noticed that.
I mean, it's just a great big brand new lump of metal. I mean, put some cooling fins on it, put some dummy spark plugs on it if you want.
Yeah.
But if you're going to make a retro bike, go the whole hog.
Give us a finned engine as well,
even
if it's not air-cooled.
Even if it's not air-cooled, make it look it.
So that's 30 points, it's neck and neck with the GSX.
Yeah, so, but not all is lost because there's 2 more bikes still to play with, isn't there?
Indeed there are. There are 2 more bikes left to come, as Paul has said. That's going to be in part 2 because this is the end of part 1. Join us after the break when we'll be meeting Kawasaki's ZRX and Yamaha's XJR. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back to Bike File, where this week we're looking at muscle bikes. Currently in joint first place we have Suzuki's GSX1400 and Honda's CB1300, but Wazza is ready now for his next test ride, which is Yamaha's muscle bike, isn't it?
Indeed it is. It's the XJR1300. Now, it used to come in 2 versions. You had the standard one and you had the SP, which was a bit tricker.
Yeah.
Now they've just made the SP the standard model, so you get the great paint job and you get those Öhlins basic shocks at the back.
I think they've done a good job. It looks well, doesn't it?
It looks spot on. I've always had a soft spot for these, so I don't think they've changed anything. Hopefully it'll be as good as it ever was.
Well, get your gear on. Let us know what you think.
Yamaha's XJR is the oldest motorcycle on this test, and it's still one of the best looking. I could probably save us all a lot of time and effort here by condensing this test to just one word: whoosh. Sadly, that's unlikely to make very good telly, so I'm afraid you're going to have to put up with my ramblings about this here XJR a little longer. Anyone who's ever ridden one will know exactly what I meant when I said whoosh. But for the uninitiated, it's all about that engine, as any good muscle bike should be. But enough about the motor, what about the rest of the bike? Well, the seat is palatial and the riding position is also very relaxed. If I were griping, however, I might pick on the fact that the bars are just a touch too narrow for when you're really hustling the bike down the tight and twisty stuff. And it is big. At 248 kilos, this is a lot of motorbike. But despite that, it can still happily grind its pegs, and then its exhausts, and even its frame, if you're really vigorous, in a surprisingly controlled, if slightly wobbly manner. In fact, the only real moan I've got with this bike is the mirrors. They're great when they're new, but once you've adjusted them a few times, things start to work loose and they tend to become useless. Getting them back into that original position will be next to impossible. But apart from this motorcycle is pure whoosh. So how's the XJR fared on the scoreboard? Styling, 7 out of 10. She's a good looker, especially in these colours. Performance, 8 out of 10. Not only is that motor creamy smooth, but it's got quite enough guts to make this bike a lot of fun. Practicality, 8 out of 10. Really comfortable riding position, great pillion seat and a centre stand. What more could you want? Well, perhaps a fairing, although that would spoil the looks. Value, well priced at 6.5 grand, it's 7 out of 10.
So it's all about the engine then, isn't it, was it, on this?
It is, it's just so whoosh, you know what I mean, don't you?
I know what you mean, yeah. That's your word of the day, isn't it? Whoosh.
It suits me down to the ground. It's simple and it's just what this bike's all about.
It is, but the power's there from wherever you want,
from
really.
nowhere.
Yeah.
So smooth.
Any gear, just pick a gear and go, isn't it? Yeah.
I love
What's this about the mirrors that you're complaining about?
Don't get me started again. Those are Satan's own work, those mirrors.
There's nothing wrong with the mirrors. You should leave them alone.
As soon as you touch them, that's it, they're gone.
Well, don't fiddle with them. Leave them alone. But you enjoyed this, didn't you? Immensely.
Absolutely loved it. Had a soft spot for it before, still got a big soft spot for it now.
Good, great bike. But it still only scored 30 points, so it's tied.
Yeah, they are level. It's a strange thing where this has strengths, some of the others have weaknesses, and vice versa, which means we've got 3 bikes all level pegging on 30 points.
We have indeed. Well, we've had three of the 4 big Japanese manufacturers, which means we've got one left, and I bet it's green. And here it is, the very big, very beautiful green.
Very green.
ZRX1200 Kawasaki, yeah.
It is
very
a
green.
stunner, isn't it?
Yeah, that's 1970s Ford Capri green.
I'm glad they've still kept the colour going. You can probably still get it in Halfords.
But it looks good, doesn't it? I think they've done a great job on it.
I'd say it's possibly the best looking here. Eddie Lawson would, well, die for one of these.
That's it at the front end, isn't it? And this is probably better than any bike Eddie Lawson ever rode, I bet.
I bet it would absolutely cane his lap times.
It probably would indeed. Right, 3 on 30 points.
Can it do more?
Well, we'll have to find out. Let's give it a go. Looking back some 21 years to the spectacular racing careers of the 1980s brings us to this rather odd-looking machine, Kawasaki ZRX1200R. No need for nostalgia now because this model shows little progress made from the days of steady Eddie Lawson, wrestling this monster round every corner. When I was just a young lad, I was always very impressed by the big muscle bikes of the day with the huge engines and aggressive looks. Fact is, most of them were made by Kawasaki. I'm thinking of things like the big original Z1. Well, Kawasaki have never given up on making big bruisers, and now they've given us this, the ZRX1200R. Yes, now you can be Eddie Lawson. Who's he? Well, we haven't got time to explain that, but the ZRX is really based on the old classic superbikes of the late 70s and early 80s, and it feels like it. Not because it's lacking in performance or handling, but because it feels lively, and dare I say, slightly skittish when compared to some of the others in this class. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how it's meant to be. And it's a fact that this actual bike is now probably far more technologically advanced than those original racers of 20 odd years ago. The motor is a derivative of that was used in the old ZRX1200. Remember that? Well, that was the fastest production bike on the planet for a number of years. So there's no surprise that this thing is rather lively. You'll have 120 brake horsepower to play with, which will provide a top speed of close to 150 miles an hour. But this is no screaming inline 4. Whether or not this is the best looking muscle bike here is really a matter of opinion. It is though the quickest just about, and it feels it too. Like the others, it's got the same kind of retro looks and they've done a great job of it as well. But this time I think it comes with a certain amount of race pedigree. Styling 9 out of 10. This is the best looking retro muscle bike on the planet. Performance 9 out of 10. Fantastic engine with that little bit of extra in reserve should you feel the need for some more excitement. Practicality 7 out of 10. There's no centre stand and the side mounting pillion grab rails can be a little bit difficult to get on with. Value 7 out of 10. It's more expensive than the Honda and the Suzuki.
Well, I'd say that was pretty conclusive, wouldn't you, Paul?
It is conclusive, isn't it? Yeah, good score that, isn't it? Great
very.
bike, fantastic bike. Not miles better than everything else, and in fact in some departments maybe not quite as good, but overall just got that little bit of something extra that the others are lacking.
A little bit of Shazam, hasn't it?
Yeah, that little X factor, if you like, that it can play a little bit harder than the others if you ever feel the need.
They can all do it to a good degree.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Varying degrees, but this will always go that extra mile when you ask it to.
Absolutely, yeah, and it looks great, doesn't it? And it's green, and it's a Kawasaki.
And it's given us a clear winner. But we know this is at the top of the tree. Let's remind ourselves of where the rest of them came in. It's time to go back to the scoreboard.
First bike on test was the Buell XB12S Lightning, scoring a disappointing 24 points.
Next came Suzuki's GSX1400, which got itself a very nice 30 points.
Hot on its heels was Honda's CB1300, scoring also 30 points.
And another one with 30, it was Yamaha's XJR1300.
But finally, Kawasaki ZRX1200 has taken the top honours today with 32 points.
Which means our winner today is Kawasaki ZRX1200. Well, last place for the Buell then, Paul.
Yeah, it's a shame because it doesn't look half bad. It's different, isn't it?
Yeah, no, respect to them for making it, and it can be a lot of fun, but it's just a fun bike. It's very hard to live with day to day.
Yeah, an acquired taste, I think, yeah. Now, these others here, anyone could have won this on another day.
Great trio, so much fun on the Yamaha.
XJR1300, great bike. CB1300.
Very polished.
Very polished.
They've made a marker this year, Honda.
Very accomplished. Now, GSX1400 would have been my winner had I not ridden these back to back.
Yeah.
Because I love that bike. Great bike, but we do have a clear winner this week, don't we?
Out there in front, by a nose, as has often been said about me, it is Kawasaki ZRX1200.
Yeah, it's everything the others are.
With a little bit more.
A tiny bit more, isn't it? And it's a great looking machine, isn't it?
It's just got to be green. The others don't even come close to covering.
That's true. Well, that's it. The ZRX1200 has won our muscle bike shootout. Join us for 5 more bikes on test next week on Bike File.
We'll see you then. Now, do you reckon we could get a couple of jet skis?
Yeah, jet ski file.
That'd be a brilliant show, that,
Great
wouldn't it?
show, wouldn't it? Yeah.